Hey, chat. We're here. We're here now. It's happening. How's it going? Happy Thursday, everybody. Sorry I missed you all yesterday. Welcome to another real good stream. If you don't know what that means, you've been missing out. But I'm here. I'm here with the real good crew, and also a very special guest. So I hope you're here for some interesting conversation and a fun time, and some Power Wash Simulator.
Yay! Yeah. And what are you cleaning today, Bob?
I honestly don't know. SpongeBob something? something about SpongeBob? That's sort of Craig's expertise, which is funny.
Yeah,
it's my job.
So he's a sponge and he lives undersea, and we're gonna clean up his house. It's actually a pineapple specifically. There's a lore to it, Bob. You'll learn it. There's a song.
I see.
Well, welcome everyone. We are so excited to announce Real Good AI's partnership with a nonprofit organization called Everyone AI, from which we have our awesome guests today. We actually have a lot in common with this organization, mostly including like ethical and responsible use of AI. And Everyone AI is actually a nonprofit learning and educating on risks of AI specifically for children. And so we're really excited to have our guest here today. Thank you so much. We have Dr. Mathilde Serioli, their chief scientist there. She has a PhD in neuroscience from the University of Montreal, and her focus was on child development and its AI integration. We're really excited to have her here. And thank you so much for joining us. She really is a visionary scientist, dedicated advocate, and really passionate about this topic. And thank you for making time for us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Bob, just a heads up, your cool intro music.
We
I think
still see your music, yeah.
Oh yeah, I will go ahead and make that stop happening.
It's a jam, we can jam out, but
yeah.
There we go. Should be done.
And also on the call, we have Dr. Iman Goumiri, who, sorry, I butchered your name. Please say it more beautifully, Iman.
It's Goumiri. Goumiri.
Yeah, there you go. I apologize. Who is a member of the Real Good team, hasn't been on a stream yet, but we're excited to have her in on this discussion as well.
Yeah, excited to participate. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, chat, we're going to ask some questions here and talk about some fun topics. But if you have any questions throughout, please feel free to put them in chat. We'd love to ask them on your behalf. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Yeah, let's jump in.
So Mathilde, please tell us about Everyone AI, how it started, and how you got involved with that.
Depends if you want the short or the long story, but basically when I moved to the Bay, so about 12 years ago now, I was finishing my PhD in Montreal, and I started working. Well, I did what you're supposed to do in Silicon Valley, so I started joining a startup and getting into entrepreneurship, mostly with the one that's now the executive director at Everyone AI, Anne-Sophie Soret. And we were doing some consulting as well for edtech companies and video game companies, where I wanted to start using neuroscience not for engagement purposes, but how do you actually create a cool product that's good for your users, and when you're using what you know about the brain to design better experiences. And so that's what we were doing. And then, like everyone, we were a bit taken by surprise by, not everyone, but a lot of people, by generative AI. And founders were asking us, okay, how do we put that in our products? Because we need that now. Like, you can't have a pitch deck if you don't have the word generative AI somewhere. And I felt it was so exciting, all the possibilities of what we could do. And then a lot of the pitches I was hearing for products for children using AI were just like bad all around. And I was like, this is an issue that I was already seeing, where sometimes like some of the people who develop games or tech solutions, they're not aware of what a child is, how they learn, what they actually need. And I was seeing the same pattern happen with generative AI, but with the risks that were much higher. So that's kind of started us on Everyone AI, where we look for people who were experts in AI, which is not our background. And we met Greg Renard and his wife, Céline Mavoisin, who work with us now on that nonprofit. So we are 4 co-founders.
So
And
you specialized in child development and the effect of AI in children. And can you elaborate more about that? Why children specifically? And
so why children? It's really just that there's risk with AI, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. And there's also potential benefits, but children are different than us adults. And I'll go just a bit nerdy on neuroscience, because that's what I do. But when the brain develops, it has what we call specific period of development that are more sensitive. So that's why no matter where you live around the world, no matter the language you speak, your culture, you will say your first word around 1 year of age, for instance. That's because genetically your brain is pre-wired for that. So you're going to have a fast expansion in the brain of connectivity that happens, that makes you really fast at learning. And as you can hear, I do have an accent when I speak in English, because I learn English outside of that critical period, which means I can learn, but I'm not as fluent or as good. I still have an accent. Some words are harder for me to find because I kind of learned too late. And so that's really one of our main focus when we think of how AI is going to change how children grow, is we're changing their environment really fast. We are introducing new paradigm, new type of interaction, and some can support actually the learning during the sensitive periods. But some interaction might actually get in the way. And that's really what we kind of as a society have to figure out. How do we make sure that the AI products that we develop really support and benefit their development and not get in the way by taking a lot of time away and opportunities to learn, or even replacing some of the, for instance, social interaction and connection with more machine interaction that cannot give the same kind of complexity to a young learning brain. And when I say young learning brain, for me, it's 0 to 25. So if we have people under 25, they're technically not done developing yet. They're still learning and improving.
So you're not against AI for kids. You're advocating for a better use of AI and more guided. So in this topic, can you give us crazy examples of things in AI products for kids that you heard about, and how harmful it could be for kids using this?
I think the first one I heard when I was like, oh, we're really not heading in the right direction was engineers that wanted to develop a podcast in generative AI. So that would be a one-time story. And that would use the parent's voice as a deep fake. And that really actually came from a good sentiment. He was like, I'm traveling a lot, I'm not always there, so I want my child to be able to hear my voice before he goes to bed. And I was like, well, then pick up your phone. But don't use generative AI for that, because there's so many issues. But one is first you have a story that's done once. So if it's a bad story, you don't have the same level of control as, let's say, there's a bad TV show on Netflix. One parent is going to end up seeing it and it will taken down, which would not be the case for that one-time generated story. And then your kid will forget it's AI. So they will start having a relationship with you that you do not have with them. And as a parent, the AI impersonating you would have much more authority figure than a voice that's not known. And so what happens if it starts giving really bad advice to a child with an authority voice that's bad? But what happens then, let's say it's actually really good. then as a parent, like you come home, you're tired, you're frustrated, sometimes you're annoyed, you're not always patient. And then that child has a version of you that's just so much better than you because it's always patient and reframing things in the right way, having the proper words. So even that's not good. So if it's good, it's bad, and if it's bad, it's bad. So in both ways, like those kind of projects don't work. So that's one that kind of got us started. And after actually talking about 10, 15 minutes to the two founders who wanted to develop their products, they were like, oh crap, like that's not what we want to do. And they just dropped it. But then I talked to someone who had the same insane idea and who had already raised capital. That person was like, no, but it's going to be fine, and we'll put on guardrails, and we'll remind the kid before that it's not their parents. And I was like, no, that doesn't. So there's also a right moment to come in product design when there's no money, basically, when there's still time to pivot easily. For sure, that's important. And the other one that I really hate is kind of a stuffed animal that you can put in your child's crib. So let's think like small baby, and it will learn your it's like breathing, heart rate, monitor everything. And if baby starts crying, then it will be able to sing with your voice to soothe baby back to sleep. So that you don't have to wake up. And I have kids, so I get it. Like honestly, at 2 a.m., I would have bought that product. I would have been like, for 10 more minutes, I would do anything at that point. So I see the product market, but when we're holding that baby and we're not enjoying any minute of it because we're exhausted, we're still connecting deeply with them. We're learning. We have so many things that happen in our body, and mainly we have a lot of release of oxytocin, which makes us really bond and get truly attached to our kids, which is something we will need when they become teenagers. Like we need to love them very strongly, but also more so it's like we know that the level of attachment between parents and kids and how healthy it is has a huge impact on how well kids do mentally and cognitively as they get older. So those moments, even if they're frustrated in the middle of the night, are important. And those products might seem like good ideas when you're exhausted and you need 10 more minutes of sleep, but they really, really impact the relationship that humans have together. Like it goes kind of interfere in ways that separate us more, which is the opposite of what we want in general for a human society, and even less between parents and kids, for sure.
So you're talking about like the empathy and the nurturing relationship with which everyone agrees is essential for like moms with their or dad or parents with their kids. So we all agree on the younger side of the kids, but talk to us more about like the benefits or dangers for adolescents. And we said like kids are, the brain is still building and developing until 25. So what about like basically the last part, like the teenage, the 20s, how AI can be beneficial and how AI can be harmful for that range of ages?
I think it's the same with kids. It depends what we allow AI to do and what AI is developed to do. So first, I think the first thing is like what happens at that time in their brain. What are they learning? Because that's where you don't want to interfere. You want them to be able to learn properly. So either you support it or you don't get in the way of it. And one of the things that happen at adolescence is during puberty, their brain really rewires. Like there's really important change. That's why they're so intense with their parents and people around them. It's because they have so much going on. But the first part that develops is the limbic system that has a lot to do with the reward system. So we hear a lot about the reward system. We hear the word dopamine being thrown a lot, especially around social media. But dopamine in the brain is really the neurotransmitter that makes us want to do something more. So you do something you enjoy, you get dopamine, and then it tells your brain, well, we want that more. So you repeat that pattern. And that's what their brain learns to do much more at that age. So they're much more reward driven. They want to have fun. They want the good thing right now. And the ability that we have sometimes to say, like, that's really fun and I want to do it, but if I really think about it, that's actually a bad idea, is more in the front of the brain, and that develops later. So there's kind of that desynchrony where they're like, I want the rewards, and they can't think through yet. So if it's, should I play a video game until 2 a.m. And I have a test tomorrow morning, they will want to stay on that video game because that's what they're primed and they're wired to do. So they're looking for that short-term reward, which make them more vulnerable to addictive patterns because they need that more in some way, and they don't have the ability yet to think through. And so that's the first one. And the second thing is they learn socialization in a whole new way. So evolutionary speaking, around that age, they have to leave the group and grow and make their kind of own little group. So that's why you see your kids detach a bit from parents, and that's really healthy. Like they still have that strong connection, but they need to form strong attachment to people outside of their small family units. And for that, you need to learn to actually adapt to others. So what you do with your best friend when there's just the two of you, or when you're in a public setting, is very different. And we do that as adults. We don't act the same during a family meal and at a work event. So we learn to really adapt to our environment, and that's really around that age that develops. So those skills are super important. So then the question is, do we have AI products that help kind of learn frustration, suggest how to make more on judgment and decision, how to be with others, to engage socially? Like that's kind of the AI products that would help. And unfortunately, what we are seeing is not really that. We are seeing things like replica or characters AI that are more AI that will create a relation with the human, that will really be developed for that. So they will be very flattering, they will be very engaging. So you have a lot of dopamine because you want that. Like we love as humans being liked by others, being the center of attention. That's something we look for. And that's really rewarding to us. And that's what AI does to us. Like it just tells how amazing we are. Like no matter what you say, like if you say like, oh, that's such a great idea.
I see.
Yeah.
So you're saying like the danger of AI is that like they let the kids, the 20s and teenage kids be too protected from these like heartbreak and bad experience. So you're saying like we should have these heartbreaks and not be kind of like protected or like kind of like isolated with this AI product that can like basically replace the environment with a more, how do we say that, a more
that feels safer. It
agreeable.
does not
Yeah.
say, but yeah, I
which
think
is
it's just also that
contradictive, right? Because like you are, as a parent, I'm saying, or any like loved one, you want your loved one to be protected. You don't want them to be bullied. You don't want them to have to go through heartbreak. You don't want them to be like in a bad situation where like they have to deal with it. And you are saying that like you should let them experience that by themselves, and they should go out and expose themselves instead of like having a virtual girlfriend and basically like isolate yourself from the society. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, and I think it's you want them to experience actually. And when you remember your adolescence, what you remember is the high and the lows. It's not just the great moment. You also remember like the time you messed up and you actually recover, and you have actually a lot of pride also over all the things you've been able to overcome. So a life without any challenges, like that doesn't sound either healthy, and that's not what we need. And I think the issue with those AI is that because it's really hard, that phase for them, like they want the reward that AI can give them, and having to go out in the world, show yourself, make yourself vulnerable, engage in social situation when you're not always comfortable, it's difficult. Like that's not what we want to do. That's not our first kind of impulse to do that. And AI then seems very seducing because you can have that illusion of not being alone, even if you are. So that will make you want that. And that's what we see when you do tests on people. Do they like AI that feels superhuman, that is what we call anthropomorphic, that will act human, talk human, refer to having a own history of living things, of having emotions, or something that feels more kind of machine robotic? People will want the human aspect because that's just like that will create dopamine. That's more rewarding. So the user wants something. And that's not actually what is really good and healthy for them. So even for companies, it's not easy because you're either
so
like.
this is my question, actually.
Yeah.
So the natural question is like, are these big AI companies having our back? Meaning, like, are they considering this harmful parts of AI and the effect on our kids, on our teens, and on our like tweens? Do you think, from your experience and consulting with other tech companies, and again, do they consider that? Do they study that? Do they put guardrails on that? Or not?
I think you can't put all the tech companies in the same basket. I think that's the first thing. I think I'm more concerned about AI companies that will say they're creating AI companions, because you know from the start that what they're trying to promote and to develop are emotional relation and attachment. So there, I think it's either they're very misguided about what humans need, and they're not always aware of the risk, because I've heard people say like, it's great, like with AI companions, there's a loneliness epidemic, which is the case. It has important impact on our mental health, on our physical health. Like people who are lonelier live less long. So we know this has an impact, and saying like AI will solve that can sound promising, but there's very little things that suggest that it will. Usually when people start using AI, at the beginning, they might report feeling less lonely because they were on their own and they're now talking to someone. But the long-term effect is not that studied. And the first results suggest that it's actually in the long term, it doesn't solve loneliness, it actually increases it, because then they start engaging more and more with AI and less with humans. So in a way, you're just creating a new issue. So for these companies,
short term is good, but like long term, it's like drugs. Short term is good, but long term is devastating.
And there will be difference. Yeah.
Where everybody has a robot girlfriend instead, and then they're too busy doing things with their girlfriend to protect the earth or make the world go round anymore, and the aliens invade, and it's bad.
That's a good movie. You have a script on your hands.
No, it's not me. It's a TV show, Futurama. Okay. It's a very funny show. They're very smart, and actually they integrate a lot of like actual stuff there. There's a lot of stuff in that show about like getting your PhD and stuff. I relate to a lot because it's lots of jokes about how it's like an endless trap and those sort of things. I'm sure we can all agree upon. Academia can be improved in certain ways, especially with the PhD students. But anyway, just a pop culture reference, throwing it in. Sorry to derail. Keep talking.
No.
So it's interesting. So I'll ask some personal question. You know, we've seen a lot of interviews of especially social media moguls and actors, like important people from like Facebook and from other previous Facebook Meta, people who tell in their interviews, like, I will never leave my kids or let my kid use these things. Like they are basically producing these like product and like not allowing their kids using it. So do you feel the same with AI in general? Like what would you allow your kids, and when and what, and or would you like just like isolate them from and again, AI, specifically social media AI, but it could be any other product, AI product that you think.
Yeah, so I have 4 kids, so I have a wide range of age, and so I see the different kind of attraction also. So my oldest is turning 12, my youngest is 3, and I do not let them use social media. I do not plan on letting them use them for a while longer, honestly. And when it comes to generative AI, so the first thing to know is that all those platforms are not like you're not supposed to go on there if you're under 13. So they're not supposed to use it. That being said, I'm now the one that is starting to kind of, with my oldest, to kind of show him some of the ways I use it. But I'm usually the one using it. So he's
Can you
not
give
doing it
examples?
directly.
Can you give examples? Like what is like
Yeah, like
the
real life example.
yeah,
A
and what is
week
why
ago,
13? It seems like random 13. So tell me more.
it's the age that they put for social media, so they put the same there. 13 actually feels like it's kind of the worst age, because you remember when I said like there's an age where they're really like craving that dopamine with low inhibition. That's around that age. Like that's kind of peaking between 13 and 14. So that's actually when they're the more at risk. That's why a lot of countries are moving toward 15 years, which sounds developmentally more appropriate. So I think before 15, I don't advise it. But with that being said, I think there's also a big work that needs to be done on how to use it, what kind of platform. So a week ago, 8 p.m., my kid comes and he's like, yeah, I haven't done my math homework. I don't understand it. And I'm like I will. And so we start looking at it, and I want to go to bed. I want him to go to bed. And I'm like, just like, okay, I haven't learned math this way. It's a different method from back when I was young, or maybe it's a European versus US thing. I don't. But so I go on ChatGPT and I say, how do I solve that equation for a kid that age? And so it gave me all the steps and the answers. And then I was able to teach it to my kids. So that really helped me. But first, when I started using ChatGPT, his answer was like, no, we're not supposed to use that. We're cheating. And I'm like, I'm not cheating. I'm doing it. And I just don't know how to help you. So that's how. And so the first time I used ChatGPT, he was like, no, that's cheating. You should not do that. And the next time he was like, oh, actually, like, can you ask the thing to give me one more exercise so that I can train with the answers after? So in a way, I think there's also
Yeah,
an
like a tutor.
important role for
More
education.
tutor.
Yeah. But if it was just like, okay, ask ChatGPT to give me the answer, like, of course, that's bad. So I think at the beginning, parents' involvement helps, because that can show like best practices and modeling. I think school has to do a great job at doing that. Like, what is a good prompt? Is that prompt helping you challenge yourself, learn more, develop your reasoning, or is it doing it for you? I think that's a question for adults, but even more for kids, because they're learning those skills. So you want to make sure they're independent from it. And it's kind of, like we've seen after ChatGPT, people were kind of making fun of that picture you had, like teachers, I don't know, maybe 60s or 70s, that are saying like you should not have calculators in the classroom. And they were kind of poking fun at that. And when you actually look, they say in elementary school. And I think that's an important point. Of course, when they're learning numbers, when they're learning what is a quantity, how much is 20, is it a big number, how do I add them quickly? Of course, you want them to learn that first. But once they're doing like complex math and they're moving on to things that are much more abstract, calculators are fine. So it's, do they use something that will help them before they're ready to be independent in that
Yeah.
skill? I
So
think that's the key.
yeah. So this is interesting. So AI in
There's actually
education.
a chat question. Can I
Yeah, sure,
bust
sure.
in on this topic? So they're hearing a lot of stories about AI to fully write assignments for kids these days. How do you encourage critical thinking and the use of AI as integration, like you were talking about, instead of just using AI to get you to the answer instead for kids?
Yeah, that's the great question. I think critical thinking is the word we throw everywhere Usually, lately, it's like, oh, we need critical thinking. With AI, we need that even more. And so it's good to come back to what is critical thinking. And it's a few things. It's having good reasoning skills, mainly, being able to be critical about your judgment of your thinking, like being able to see yourself thinking and think, maybe that's not the great idea. So that's more like metacognitive skills. And then you need a lot of knowledge on the topic. So you can be, and when you do studies, you can have someone that's very great in one domain and they are great at critically thinking about that. But another domain they have little knowledge about, they're going to do very poorly on that. So I think with kids, what's important first is that before they start using a tool, for instance, for an assignment, they should do their research on their own. They should already develop their knowledge and their understanding. They can actually use some AI tools that are better for that, where the input will be higher quality, where there's less hallucination. And when you make sure that what they learn is actually good. So I think the first thing is like they need the knowledge, and then they won't need AI to think critically because they will have the right tools. And I think the issue we see is that to use AI critically, so while really thinking of, is it helping me? You actually need to understand AI really well. And so that's where I see a gap right now, where people don't understand how it works. They don't know what it does well, what it does poorly. They have a lot of misconceptions about it. And so then when they use it, they're not actually critically using it. They're just kind of plugging themselves onto it. And that's normal. Like, that's new. Like, we
So
haven't had really
what-
time to learn that.
So what you're saying is like, it's like the difference between like you have an autonomous car and you trust that it will drive you somewhere, or if you are still in command, you're still the pilot and decide, take the decision. So you're saying we have to keep these like knowledge active, and we should learn as well and use this. So I have another question about that in a different way. So the science, no question, like we need to learn about it. But what about writings? Like, you know, we have a lot of college students who have to write a lot of essays and things like that. Don't you think that like AI is a great equalizer between all these like essays? Like, you know, they would like write a hell of an application and essay for one student, and it's kind of like standardize it to everyone. Everyone is expecting now, is expected to write great essays or whatever. So how is it translated in like more ChatGPT using and writing essays?
I guess the question is, why do we write essays? I think that's the real question, because usually the goal of writing essays and not just like spitting out answer is that you're actually understanding, articulating, integrating the knowledge. So that's where I feel like when you go to AI too early to do that, like if you kind of use it, and there's so many cool ways. Like I wrote like a 60-page research report that took like me 8 months. I used AI heavily, but the way I used it was to help me organize, rethink, challenge. And now I do remember what I wrote, and sometimes I have to write quick stuff. And I don't care actually about the importance of it. And then that's fine to take shortcuts. So I think it's also, how important is it for you to develop your understanding? Is it like, and I shouldn't say that, but I'll still say it, is it like your major, the work you're going to be doing, where you need the skill, you need the expertise? Like, do not write essays with that. Is it the thing that you really had to take, you have no interest about, you're never going to touch it again? But if you have to take a shortcut and gain an hour or two of productivity, maybe do it there. So it's a lot also about personal use and what you're looking to get into. If you just want the grades, yeah, it's great. If you want the knowledge, it's not going to do it for you. Like, there's no magical way of learning. Learning in the brain is repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating. And so if you don't have that phase where you just go over your thoughts and you develop and you deepen and you make connections, there's no learning happening. Like that, you can't outsource on a computer.
Right, but so in terms of preparing kids for their future, they will probably in their careers have to use AI in a way that you're describing. And you've obviously picked it up very quickly because you understood exactly the right ways to use it and what not to. It just sort of seems like it to me, this is a whole nother senior level course that they should be teaching or
No.
something
Yeah,
in terms of
definitely.
education. I guess my question is, in order to make room for something like that, what are we giving up? Because I think the teachers are already at the end of their ropes here, but we want to prepare them for the future. How do we make sure they can personally write, but then also know how to use AI at the same time? It just seems like we're asking a lot. Do you have any thoughts on that?
That's a good question. I think the going into just learning about AI is going to be missing a big part of the issue. I think they need to learn the interaction between themselves and AI. So I would see how you can even integrate that to more like kind of social emotional learning programs, which is well, that's how you regulate, and that's how sometimes you could use AI to regulate, and that's how AI can use some of your weaknesses that you have as a human to keep you hooked, to keep you longer. So I think it's making those connections about what works for individuals, and then is AI your friend in a way, like helping you, supporting you? I don't like saying friend for AI, but like, is it a positive force for you, or is it actually like kind of keeping you down? And I think then in school, we need to articulate not just what is AI. Yes, people need to understand it, but they also need to understand themselves. And we think sometimes because we're humans that we are great at knowing how we function, we're actually really bad at it. And when people better understand some of their functioning, then it becomes much easier to make sound decisions and to make decisions that are personal. So something that might be okay or acceptable for someone might not feel for that other person, depending on their values, what is important to them. And so I think it's really working within that space.
Great. We have another chat question. So this person is asking, they're saying they think the main problem people have with AI is the slippery slope argument, meaning if I use AI
Yeah.
for this, then I'll end up using it for everything. What are some like signs that a child's relationship with AI has become unhealthy and requires an intervention?
So first, for like human and AI, we talk about parasocial relationship because they're not actually social relationship because they're one-sided. They happen in your mind only. And we've had parasocial relationship for a while, like with characters in movies, in books. So we create or with content creators. Some have a parasocial relationship with you, like they know you very well and you know nothing about them. So that already happens, but that happens in your head. And the difference with AI is that now you have a feedback that is outside of you in that parasocial kind of interaction. And I'm sorry, I completely, signs that you should worry and that kind of slippery slope. I think when there's emotional engagement, you tend to have that kind of slippery slope that starts where AI cannot feel. There's no reciprocity with it. It doesn't actually care about you. It will say it does with words that feel very real, but it's just a computer in the end. So especially with kids, anything that's highly emotional, I would refrain. Doesn't mean that things like Alexa, Siri, they do not engage emotionally. So for pure information retrieval, like what's the weather today, what's 6 plus 2, tell me a knock knock joke, that's kind of fine because like there's no relationship really being built there. Compared to an AI that will send you text to know how you're doing. So like you did not talk to me today. What's up? What's going on? Like that's very different. So I think that's for the connection part, that's kind of the slippery slope when you're starting to miss your AI. I think that's when you should really start asking yourself questions. And even then, I think it's interesting to see what are people looking for when they're starting to really create more of a relationship with an AI, because I think it's a good sign of what are you missing in your life that you're searching somewhere else. And then how could you find that in the world with real people? So that's actually also informing you about some of your needs. And I think cognitively, so when you use it more for work and academics, it becomes when I think it's really easy to start using it by default, because we don't like, we're kind of, as humans, we like to save energy. We tend to be lazy. Like we don't want to do something we can not do. So it's easy for us to start using it by default. And I think then it's important to really think of what it means when we start doing that, and when should we keep doing some stuff. So I think it's also how outsourcing things that have little value and not the things that you actually enjoy doing, or where you feel like where you want to learn or where you want to grow, you know. Yeah.
Well, I saw this is sort of circling back a little bit, but I did see an
Yeah.
interesting article about you were talking about how people are sort of defaulting to AI. And there was a usage statistics that came out that they do like monthly and I think quarterly usage statistics of different websites online. And Chat GPT is increasing in usage to a level that hasn't really been seen since kind of social media boom. And the seems like the prevailing theory on that is that people are just using ChatGPT as their interface to the internet. It's not like someone is going online and coming up with like a question or something and like, oh, I'll go to ChatGPT and that'll, to answer this or to find this. They're literally using ChatGPT like it's their web browser. And so every single thing, their entire internet experience is filtered through however ChatGPT is summarizing things for them, whatever sources it is finding. That seems crazy to me. I don't at all have that experience, but that seems to be what like the bigger sort of numbers, I don't know, the aggregate usage numbers are showing, which is concerning given what you're saying, because I'm sure a lot of those users are fairly young people, kids, on their phone and engaging with the internet, however they do that. Just interesting,
right?
That's such a shift right now.
It's worth noting also, sorry to interrupt you, Bob, that although these tools are meant for kids older than 13, like we said, there's no barrier to using them regardless. You can just go to their websites and talk to it these days. And technically you're supposed to agree to the terms of service, but you don't even have to, like, it's some adult content websites like Bob's Twitch even, you probably have to click something that says, I'm fine with the fact, or I'm older than some age. They don't even have those in place yet.
So you actually have that the first time you log on to ChatGPT. But then, so the first time you did, which we all don't remember doing, we did have to say that. But then it's kind of like, it's already on the browser. So if once you logged, first, and there's no proper verification, you just have to say, yes, I'm above 13, which is very poor. As a way of checking and of making sure kids are not lying about their age. And most of the time then it's on the computer or the phone or whatever, and after that there's no restriction. But I think for what you said, but it's kind of like we already have that with Google, where we don't see all of the results, so it's already kind of filtering the word. And when you look for a restaurant, there's already an algorithm that's telling you, you should go to that restaurant. And now it's going to be more personal. And I guess one of the concerns can be, because it's going to be more personalized to specifically you, how will that kind of like lock you in a bubble even more, where you're going to see only things that you're likely to like? And I think often in life, when you have an experience that you didn't think you would enjoy, or that kind of came as a surprise, there's a lot of good feelings in that. And I think that kind of echo chambers and echo bubble that we already had some on social media, I think is going to increase if people use those browsers, from those AI tools as browsers for sure.
So how can we, so what are the simple things that we can do to protect our kids and teens? What are, because I hear you, what you're saying, but like, you know, what can you do practically in order to kind of like protect them from that? Besides like taking away their phone and shutting off
Yeah.
internet.
Which won't work anyway, because they'll find ways. I think honestly, it's giving them as much information as possible. Because if you say do not do that, it's strictly forbidden. The only thing that it's going to do is that they're going to want that even more. So going with which doesn't mean like you should not put restriction, but I think it's not good for you. You should not use that. I think it's just not going to be effective. Whereas like having more open conversation about, and I think that's what we see with teens and social media. They will ask parents to be on social media. Some parents will say no. And then it becomes a lot, like it will drive a lot of friction in the relationship. So having open conversation about why do you want social media? What part are you feel like you're missing out on? And you can still be really firm in your knowledge that no, that won't happen before 13, 14, 15, doesn't matter the age you decide for your family. So you can be firm in that, but also make sure you understand what they want out of it, because sometimes you might think like you know what why they're using it or why they want it, and completely miss the point. And then it's easier to find also compromise, because that you kind of have to learn and to learn to compromise with them, because in the end we want them to become independent adults. So we want to give them the ability to use those tools and to think critically about them. So talking with them a lot of the time, asking them what they're doing, what their kids are doing, telling them about some of the risk, also finding outside sources that will tell them about the risk. Because if your parent tells you something, it has so much less value than if anyone else tells them. So I think that's where it's a good way of approaching that with them.
Great. So here's another chat question. One question I have is, how do you teach children to recognize AI? Because I think unknowingly interacting with AI can alter the perception of reality, and even adults can struggle to recognize what is AI and what isn't.
There's no good programs, I guess, yet. I wish we would see more in the, like movies and stories that actually tell that to kids. We don't have good books yet. Or, even like stories or movies about that. In the end, like the robot will become the kid's best friend. And I think as long as we didn't have robots who could become the kid's best friend, it was fun, like their best friend with their pet sometime in cartoons. But I think right now we need to have a program that's a bit more responsible about, okay, what can a robot do, what it can't do, and when you should turn to humans. So I think we need, like educational program and fun movies and characters about that. So because that's the best way, I think, to approach kids about this question. Like that's what they're going to see in there.
Do you have some ref? Do you have some ref about that? Do you have some examples of good tools for kids?
Not really. I think we need to work on those. I actually had an author contact me and say oh, I wrote a story between a kid and an AI, and now I'm rethinking, is it a good idea? Could you review it? Because he was pushing for relationship in the book and then kind of relating, maybe we should not do that anymore. So I think we're kind of at, I think it's all very new still. And so we don't have the pop culture for it yet.
Great. So we've been talking like a lot about the negative aspects of AI and why it can be harmful, but clearly it's a transformative technology that in the future is going to really help certain people. Um, Particularly, I've already heard buzz about how it can be used for neurodivergence. I think a lot of people here, I'm personally, and some other people on the call have some version of
Yeah.
neurodivergence and have used some hacks, if you will, with AI and just talking to ChatGPT in responsible ways. Can you speak to how it's a tool for neurodivergence?
Yeah. So I have ADHD, so I really see how it's been a force. And for me, like the way I use it is, we usually like so I'll talk about ADHD because that's what I know best from the inside. But one of the issues is everything that's executive functioning. So initiating a task is a nightmare. Like, like that white paper, like that white page where you're like, where do I start? Often for me, I'm realizing just going on ChatGPT and saying, I need to write something that is that length where I need to talk about that and do that, which is what people usually do. They make a plan in their head, which I'm really bad at doing. Just being able to put that in ChatGPT, I think has done half of the work for me because it kind of makes it easier to initiate. And I think for organizing thoughts, of course, where ADHD people are very good at divergent reasoning. So what you do is like you have one question and you find 20 parallel answers that are interesting. And it's really hard then to organize that. So sometimes I will write my 20 elements and bits of answers and then title it, create categories about it. And then I can just work on the concept words rather than the whole paragraph, sentence, and explanation. So that's a way for me to organize my thoughts when it's too hard. And sometimes I would just call someone and brainstorm with them. Now I can do it more on my own. For emails are honestly, like, it's the worst thing for me. Like receiving an email is, it's the worst because you spend time answering and then people reply back. So it's
Right. There's nothing worse than you
cycle.
spending forever to make an email and they respond immediately and then you have to write a whole nother thing.
Like it took me 3 days to find the motivation to answer.
Exactly.
And they did that in 10 minutes and now it's back. Like so for that, AI is great. Like that's really helpful because it can help you in areas where anyway you're doing poorly, so you can't get worse than that. And so I feel like that's kind of the ways it can help, especially when you're an adult. I think for children, I'm a bit more concerned because a big part of what's hard with ADHD is you have lower dopamine baseline levels. So that's why you look for short-term reward more because you're trying to just increase your dopamine level to a more normal level, I would say. And so that's why there's more risk of addiction for people with ADHD. It's because you are a dopamine seeker. And AI can give you in so many ways with social media, some video games, but it's kind of different because you have much more flow in video games. It's less like short term than, like a reel is like 20 seconds, whereas like video games will put you for much longer. You're active in that. So I think I would put that in another category. But it's still a way that gives you a lot of dopamine. So if you have AI system for neurodivergence that are specifically developed by people who understand neurodivergence, who understand what are the needs that will help the users, I think then it can really be a great tool that will help a lot of children learning in school, adults later. But if you have models that are developed on neurotypical data that are only working for neurotypical and not tested specifically for them, then you will have kind of the same thing as what we see in education, a system that doesn't cater to their needs. So I think then we might need specific solution that will really fine tune to them. And then I'm really excited about seeing the potential for that.
Great. Yeah.
How have you used it? How has it helped you?
For me, I as a scientist with imposter syndrome. One way I've used it that's relatively innocuous is that, you know, you solve a problem and you write a solution and you're like, well, this is the solution, and you're like, well, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. So I go in and write what I was like, the prompt of what I was prompting to do in ChatGPT, and then I look through the answers and I'm like, oh, well, I considered that and that's silly, and oh, that's fine, that's fine. Like, I've covered all my bases, because there's what it's telling me is like a lower quality content than the thing that I actually
Yeah.
created, and it gives me confidence, which allows me to go do it and pursue it. It's just like a second opinion, if you will, even though it's not an
Yeah.
expert opinion. It's just like, did I miss anything obvious that a neurotypical person would have already
Yeah.
considered that I, from my perspective, have not thought of?
Well,
So
that's a good point. I could see that.
Yeah, for me, it's just writing. So with my broken English, I try when I want to
well,
write
your
a
English is
paper.
not broken.
Yeah.
It's still, you think in French and then you write. So when I have to write scientific papers or like report or things like that, I kind of write in my language, it's my own English broken language, and I put it in ChatGPT and ask it to kind of like embellish it. So basically, it's very helpful because, like, when I read it from the ChatGPT, I say, "Yeah, it's exactly what I was saying."
It's just now people understand what I mean.
Yeah, I have to say though, from my experience, sometimes it's completely off. I don't know if I don't like I'm that's when I want to warn people. It's not that easy. It's not like put something and just click and it's done. You have to go through it and read it and see if it kept like the meaning intact, because
Yeah.
as foreigners speaking English, like you have some like formulation from the French for us, but it
Yeah.
could be from any other language, that when you write it like this, ChatGPT cannot like pick up this like dual language expressions or things like that, that like kind of miss out completely the sense of the sentences. So it's an extra work, but at least the structure is nicer and the
And
vocabulary is richer, for sure.
sometimes I feel like it just adds so many useless words where I'm like,
Yes, but
strike
which
that,
is
strike that,
nice.
strike that.
And phrases
But
and
it
phrases.
adds so much
Yeah.
weight to like having to process the sentence, because you're like, oh, in like a 15 word sentence, there's actually 4 that we can scratch. So I think I'm like, oh, it's just like cognitive load for nothing. So, but I think sometimes I also like using ChatGPT when I have no idea of where to start, and I will say like, I need to talk about this, and I usually hate what it will give me. But it's easier for me to be like, but no, that's not what you should say. That's what you should say, and that's what you should do. And so, in a way, just like
Right.
knowing what I don't want helps me know what I actually want.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes I see symptoms like for my kids, if they are sick or something, or if I'm sick, when I put it in ChatGPT, it's always cancer. The answer goes always to
It's great.
cancer.
That's because of the internet,
Yes,
Yeah.
it's like when you go to this like doctor forum thing, like you chat with, it's always cancer at the end. Blah 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 blah, cancer. So so thank God we have real doctors, and you should always go and see your own doctor and seek medical advice from a medical person.
Yeah.
But yeah, ChatGPT always give you like this crazy answer. Very rare.
Well, it probably didn't give you only that though, Amen, right? And so the point is
Honestly,
that
Yeah.
it's going to give you some ideas, but then
yeah, but they
you
always lead
use
to
judgment
cancer.
to.
They always lead. I'm not kidding. Try it. Like you add
I
this,
believe
and this,
you.
you do like I have this and this, and it add this, and say, well, it could be a melon, some blah blah blah, something in, I don't know what's the term, but when you click and Google on it, it's cancer. So it's kind of like exceeding the excessive in the response. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm sure it can also help, and that's starting to be used by doctors as well. But I think like for like note taking and them not having to spend that many times just doing their reports, I think then that's
Yeah,
interesting.
as a tool. It should not be
Yeah.
the base of knowledge. It should be a tool that is used to assist you, not take decision or give you the answer. That's a big difference.
Right. And if
Like
you're only
I just
reading,
saw.
go ahead. Sorry.
I saw a study and actually like it was what's the like they were looking at diagnosis. I should find the reference. Was it better by doctor with AI or AI? And actually AI did better than doctors with AI, but one of the issues and theories of why it's because doctors don't know how to use AI well yet, so that it actually makes them more proficient at it. So yeah, it does have some potential there, but I think sometimes it's important to. I think when you go to the doctor, sometimes what you want is to connect with someone, have someone that cares that
Empathy.
you're
Yeah,
hurting in a way
sure.
that's seeing you, and I think that's very different. So, but if it's like, should you renew a prescription that you've had for a while, like maybe then it could kind of diminish the caseload for some doctors so that they actually have time to connect with patients that need that connection at that moment. So I guess it also depends what you're in there for.
Any questions from chat, Amanda?
Bob, do you have any on the YouTube side?
No, I think they've been getting all transferred over to the Twitch chat anyway. Yeah, I guess I don't want to derail the interesting scientific conversation, but what you're a neuroscientist. Do you have any good what's like your favorite myth that people believe about the brain? Or like, you know, like what's one of the most interesting misinformation bits? Because I'm sure, as with any discipline, I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that people just, you know, say like it's common wisdom, and you hear them say that, and you're like, oh, no, no, that's not. What do you have any of those?
We only use 20% of our brain thing. Just sleeping, you're using your whole brain. So that's one we hear a lot about. Like we could unlock magical power. No, like we need all of our areas for everything.
Is there some reason that it became a saying? Is there something like,
well, it's because of like how they can, when they're kids, they can like remove half the brain and still function, right?
But that's because their brain actually rewires a lot. So what happens is our brain becomes really good at, so we're supposed to have kind of our brain will usually follow a trend where, yes, language will be more on the left side for many aspects of it, like knowing the words, storing, accessing it. The right will deal more for language with the rhythm of it, the intentions, reading the social clues. So you kind of have those two sides, but we've had young kids especially need surgery for important epilepsy where you remove the whole part that's supposed to do that. And it's just like, because language is so important and we need it so much to function, it will reorganize on the other side. So at first you have a complete loss, and then the brain will recover. But when you do that, usually the skills that were supposed to develop there won't develop as well, because you only have so much space. So it doesn't mean it doesn't come with any loss. But I think that's part of why where they were like, well, you could remove half the brain and you're fine. But being alive and functional-ish doesn't mean you're perfectly fine and you got to the same level you would have without that. So I think that's probably big part of that comes from that.
And sorry, I think you were about to say another myth that you encounter a lot too. I sort of cut you off there.
I guess
maybe not. Maybe you were just.
I think so. No. This one is more because I was trained in Europe, and over there, like psychoanalysis. So to start with, I worked as a neuropsychologist for several years. So more like doing cognitive assessment and diagnosis of a whole lot of things, but a lot of learning disabilities and neurodivergence. And what I would hear a lot in France is like, oh, like it's because of the mob. Like a lot of the issues that are neurodevelopmental were seen over there as parents not doing their job, not having the proper authority, being too absent, or so. And I think it's starting to move and improve, but really people not understanding that it's just like there's a different wiring here. And that's why some of the behaviors that are common in 80% of the population are not. I think is interesting to kind of reframe, and where because we compare to the norm, so the way tests are developed is like basically you're supposed to be within the 60% of the kind of normal section. And because neurodivergent act in different way, they're not always within that. And so it feels like, oh, then it's seen as a disability, but it's not testing for what sometimes is better or functioning differently and functioning, in some ways like works better in those individuals. So where it's only seen as loss of what you can't do and not seeing the strengths that come with that is something I see a lot.
Interesting.
Because I'm sure, like, because it seems that we have several of us in the room with neurodivergence. I'm sure we've all noticed some ways where sometimes we're like, oh, how could I miss that? Am I the only one in the room that did not see that? And on the opposite, like, how can they miss that? Like, am I the only one seeing it? So it just sometimes it's kind of like we have a different filter of what we will put our focus or our energy on, where it can either be like really a strength and helpful, and yes, on other aspects it's just really annoying. It costs a lot with car reparation and this kind of thing for sure, but you know, like there's I think it's a wide range of different skill sets. So yeah, that's one I see a lot.
Interesting.
Yeah. Where do you feel like it's a strength? Yeah. I was saying, like, where do you feel like it comes as a strength?
Oh, I think my headset might have cut out. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Oh, no.
Are you with us?
We
Sorry,
can hear
Bob.
you.
Sorry, I'm sure you can hear me, and it's hilarious.
It's okay.
Somebody else talking.
I have another question from the chat. So,
Yeah.
Brain Science, got any chill theories on why watching gamers clean virtual oceans is so satisfying?
Yeah, I know. Like, I like it. I like having the dual task right now where I'm like, oh, I know where to actually put my attention. I kind of, so because I knew we were playing that game, I was like, why do we like watching that? And I think so what I saw is that they wanted to scan people and see what happens when we do anything that's more like relaxing in that way. And one of the things, it was that it actually disengages what we call the default network, which is the one that's really like inside of us, like where we kind of are in our own thought process. And that helps us actually attach our attention on the outside, which can lead to more relaxed states. So even when you put people in brain scans, watching those kind of content or listening to, you know, like those ASMR sounds, they will get to a state of relaxation. But why, I'm not sure. But it's actually like been shown that ASMR can really help people with anxiety. I think there's also probably just the fact that it feels very accomplishing. Like, you know, well, like it's dirty and now it's clean. Like there's we enjoy finishing something, being able to start and finish a process feels good. Like we will get dopamine when we're done with something. So Usually, I think there's a lot of that, and it's probably easier than looking around and then you look at your house and you're like, oh, like to clean that, there's a lot of physical effort involved all of a sudden compared to cleaning the screen, which is
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question on gaming in general. So
yeah.
you talked that like you said that you would put gaming aside with the use of AI compared to social media or things like this. Can you explain more about that? And what are the effect? You know, we always heard like it's not good for kids to be gamers too early or to play too much or all these like, you know, myths or good or bad or I don't know. But like add to it AI, what's the cocktail like on the
Uh,
kids?
I think for video games, the question is like there's so many different type of video games, and putting them all in the same basket doesn't make sense at all. So when we see that a lot of the video games used now are kind of like apps on the iPad, those often are not great video games. They are low budget, they are high dopamine, and they're not pushing for a lot of reasoning. Some are, but those are not the same as like high quality video game content. I think it's kind of the same as like junk TV and art movies. You know, like you can't really compare the two. So I think there's that. And so now what we're seeing is with AI in video games, NPCs are going to be much more interactive because they have much more capacity to, you know, kind of improvise with the context. And that's kind of where I'm like, that could go different direction, because you're going to have NPCs that are much better, much richer, where you can really start having a relationship with an NPC, depending on what's allowed in the gameplay, of course. And then it's worse when that character dies, when it was like just a random NPC that could only give you like pre-scripted answers, like, yeah, they died, it was fine. But if you've like actually been playing with that NPC for so long and it's been your sidekick, like that can have some issues. And I think what we hear for like video games in general, with like, oh, they're bad, I think it depends how old you are, like what kind of content are you watching. Like, should you play super violent game when you're 6? Like, probably not, but you shouldn't be watching a movie that's super violent at that age. If you're older, I guess it depends how long you play with it, what kind of behaviors are normalized. And I know the video game industry is changing a lot and making a lot of changes in how it's seeing some of the patterns. But because when you look at the literature, what you see is that it can increase sexism in some contexts. It can increase racism because of the design that were chosen of who can be a lead character, when it's a female lead character, how is she represented, how often they're over-sexualized, and how males are often like very muscular. Like those things we are realizing on younger audience has an impact on how they perceive roles in society. And that's where you see more games making changes and also being aware of the kind of responsibility they can have in changing some of those patterns. So that's where like there's things that are more positive. But I think one of the difference for me between social media or even like more passive screen time and watching videos is that you're actually active, you're doing stuff. You're not just watching a screen. Often there's in many of them there's so much strategy that goes on. For some there's so much also like relationship, leadership, where like when you play as a team, you have someone that has to call the shots, make decision. You need to convince the rest of the group, no, I think we should do that. So then it's very different than you just like scrolling TikTok like that, where there's actually very little that goes on in the kind of effort you put. So I think that's why for me it's a different story. It doesn't mean that all video games are good, but there's many that have benefits for their users for sure.
Do you have a video game that was your favorite that you've played?
So I was that person, like that's perfect for me because I was really bad at playing video games, but I loved watching people play video games because I have no sense of orientation. So I would, like if I was playing Tomb Raider, for instance, I could be for the 10th time in the room and not notice it was the room I was already in. So the characters were not doing what I wanted, but I had friends who played and I would love like say like, oh, you should go there and you should do that. So I'm probably the annoying person when you're a gamer. But that part, I enjoyed the watching and overall I like, but I think it's the same for short game. I like short games. Like it's like 5 minutes and you do several of them. Things that last for a long time and where you have to look for the solution. I'm too lazy to push through. That's why I needed to have someone do it for me and just be like, okay, like that's getting frustrating. Let's talk about something else, and I don't have to put energy in it. But with my kids, I really like Mario Kart because it's a very fun bonding moment where they can beat me, feel happy about it. It's kind of changing the hierarchy. They know more about it than I do. They get to be the teachers.
Does it cause problems with the blue shells or?
It does. Like it's hard not to get mad at your kids. And I love Overcooked. Overcooked is a great family game if you want everyone to hate each other.
It's my
at the end.
favorite game.
It works great. Yeah, so this one is fun. But I remember like once we were playing Overcooked over Christmas. I think we had been playing for like 2 hours with my 2 older kids, and all of a sudden we were supposed to make lunch and we had not started. And then I got a text from my husband who's like, oh, I'm getting home in 15 minutes. And I was like, oh shoot, like we overplayed way too long. We have to move. And we were still in that kind of energy where you do that and you do that. And like in 15 minutes, everything was done. I was like, so I'll do that. You get to do that. You set the table. And I was like, that never works usually. But because they were kind of in that, yeah, like let's do it. Like it worked. So that day my kids helped. That was the only thing. So Overcooked can be a good parenting tool, I guess.
I love that.
Another question from the chat. What might be some of our most promising strategies for reminding users that language-based AI is not meaningful social interaction, but rather mathematical formula?
That's a good question. I wonder, like when you see the AI and it says like it's thinking and it's telling you the thought process, I would be really curious if they did an experiment with users and saw how it was kind of influencing their behaviors. If instead of putting language there, we would put math formula. If that would change, I don't know. I don't think that study exists, but I would really want to see it. Like, how would people perceive it? Would it act as a reminder? Like, oh, it's actually like algorithmic prediction and not someone behind the computer thinking.
Don't you think when there is like some stuff like that they have to disclose, like there's a lot of businesses where they have to disclose if there is like nuts and whatever in whatever you eat. If you have allergies, they have to disclose all the allergens that are present. I think we have to do the same kind of thing for AI-based languages. Like remind people constantly. We remind you that this is an AI.
And I think we'll get to those things where I think we are going to need to help also like users understand, oh, like this is more ethical and this is less ethical, and have that kind of label or notation that will help people know what's junk and what they can rely on and when they can't, why. I think that would really help with better adoption. And I think when you have that, then companies, the more your users know about the quality of the products, the more they raise the bar of what you have to do. So I think that's also one of the way of pushing for better products. If people are like, I don't want to use that because I learned that if it's super anthropomorphic and it starts saying like, oh, I felt that way before, it's bad, then they won't be as much an ask for that by users, and then it will be harder for companies to develop those products. And they won't need to, because I think sometimes they're in a position where you're like, oh, either I do something super anthropomorphic and I have a lot of users, or I feel like it's not ethical and I don't do it, but then I'm losing market share. And so I think that it becomes really hard to make the long-term good for the whole world decision.
So from your perspective, and having like talked with like companies, as you said, but also like a coalition with governments included into it. So are you positively hopeful that like the alliance of like government and big companies are watching for the kids and the damage that AI can be to the kids and can have on the kids? And are you like sure that like this will stay the same?
So with Everyone AI, with the Paris Peace Forum, we co-launched a coalition in February where we have now over 12 governments. We have some of the biggest tech companies that join, experts in AI and child development, and a lot of NGO and international organization. And the goal is to push for more beneficial tools by bridging the research world of people who actually like know what to do, but where sometimes that great research stays too much in labs, and putting it in the hands of the people who need to know that to make those products. And I think for me the hope is that this one's great. I got distracted. So you can make art on that too. But I think they're seeing with social media that it's had an impact. And so, oh, now I know what you're spelling. So I think they're realizing that you kind of. I really thought you were gonna spell crap. Like that's where my head was. So I was stuck on that.
Well, Craig left me a message over here, so I thought I should leave
really
Craig a
thought
message.
it was that.
Nope, just my name. Just
And
my
then I was
name.
like, oh, that's not a P. I think we've seen the impact of social media, and everyone agrees that they could be better. Like we could have thought about like, oh, is it good for my users? Is it what they actually need to thrive? And a lot of people in AI companies come from actually more like social media companies, and they know how hard it is to make changes when the products are on the market. So I do see a lot of individual motivation to do better. And I mean, like, time will tell. I think it will be a lot of back and forth.
But the thing is, like, you're talking about child development and child protection, but like from these AI tools, but the principle's still the same even once after 25, when you have like a fully developed brain. I mean, all these bad and things and cons of AI still apply for adults as well, right?
Yeah. I see two things there. Like, alcohol is not great for you, but it's much worse if you're kids. And then once you're an adult, we can tell you it's not great in large quantity, and you get to make a decision. So I think for me, that's where like children, there's a difference, is that they should have the opportunity not to be exposed to content or interaction that might be harmful for them, because they're still learning. And at the same time, the best way to protect adults is to force them to protect their kids. So, you know, when they couldn't put like seatbelts on in the car, like they said, like, we need to put seatbelts on from now on in the car. No one was adopting it. At some point, they said, like, we're only going to make it mandatory for kids. And then we are going to give huge fine when kids don't wear the seatbelts. So then what happens is your kid is like, oh, like, why do I have to wear a seatbelt? I don't want a seatbelt. And then you're like, well, because if we have an accident, you're going to die. And then when they ask you, what about you? Well, you kind of have to wear your seatbelts. And I think that's the same thing I see there. It's much easier, and you will see that everywhere. Like, we are primed to protect our progenitor. So mom will start exercising, eating healthier when they're pregnant, and once the baby is born, they will go back to worse habits. Me first, honestly, because all of a sudden it's not just about you. So we're able to want to protect them in a way we don't always do for ourselves. Um, and so I think that's where I feel like we can make changes. Some things are not great for adults and they shouldn't do it. And still, the shorter way of like really convincing them to pay attention is when you tell them it's bad for your kids, and then the things will evolve on their own, because they will have to model better behavior as well.
Just a fun question to throw out there. So, if you were replaced by an AI today, what's the first thing everyone would notice about differences between you and the AI?
Probably that I would answer my email faster, and that if you ask me more than 2 questions in a chat, you would get an answer. Because if there's more than 2 questions, I'm like, ooh, that's a lot of work, and you will never get an answer in real life. But I guess an AI would address both of them. So I would be just more on task. How about you?
Oh no, I should think of answers for questions that I deal out.
Your turn.
I guess that my thoughts are more free flowing and less organized. Probably that the ChatGPT or other
Yeah.
AI responses are very organized with bulleted lists and numbering of things. Mine would be a big loop, and everyone would not
Yeah.
understand why it's so organized. What about you, Bob?
Yeah.
Ooh. I think, I mean, the responding quickly to emails thing definitely holds true. I'm awful about that. But for the sake of having my own, I think your impression of me might be better than this, but it would swear a lot less than I tend to. And especially in my online presence, people who are used to watching my content, my YouTube videos and stuff, would be like, "What? Bob went PG. What happened? Super weird." Not my best
Yeah.
habit, but
Well,
I
ChatGPT actually content blocked itself to me the other day. I don't know what it was trying to say to me, but it context blocks itself. I don't know what it was going to say. But honestly,
What did you do to it?
I was just playing around with the idea of if one could like play a choose your own adventure game in ChatGPT just for fun, entertainment purposes only. I was just playing around with that, and it was a horror story. So I'm imagining it was getting
Oh,
into
yeah.
some gore it wanted to say or something, but there was a lot of wind blowing. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, because they do have a lot of safeguards on this model, and I think that's not all models do, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
So another fun question. People talk about AIs. So we've talked about that they don't have a specific like morality or understanding of things philosophically the way humans do. But people, you can ask them the philosophical questions or have them do human experiments that we've done before. One that I think would be particularly interesting is asking, trying to set up something like the Milgram experiments. Can you explain what those are a little bit and talk about how you think AI would do in that?
The Milgram experiment was designed to understand why people do what they do under pressure, and so it's the one where they had to inflict. So I will just give the experiment for the one who might not know about it. It's a famous social experiment. So they wanted to understand why during the Nazi Germany, people would do what they were asked. And they thought, oh, maybe there's something wrong with those people. And then they looked at, is it common to everyone? And the answer is like, yes, we can all do awful things under pressure. So they would put a real person that would come for the experiment in one room. And then they would be told that they needed to inflict electric shock to the person in the next room. And so the other person was actually an actor. So they would just go like, ah, and you would hear them scream. And they would increase the voltage. And they would know, like, when you get to that voltage, it's actually likely to potentially kill that person. And a lot of people went all the way through. And so they played a lot with it to understand what increases the chances of people going all the way through or not. And so when it was like someone with like a white doctor scientific jacket, people would go much more all the way through than without. So depending on the level of authority of that person that would play. And so that's kind of the experiment on humans. And so I wonder how it could even be translated to AI, of like testing how far an AI would go when it's asked for something. And I think that depends a lot on the safeguards, and they're starting to kind of do experiment with that, where you will ask an AI that no matter what, you should not hurt human, but then you might find yourself in position like, oh, should you, like, I don't know, like, and I think we already see some of that. I don't know how they deal with that, but for autonomous car, should you save your conductor, or should you save those 5 people crossing the street? Like,
Right.
where should you swerve in that building at the risk of killing the conductor, or should you just run through those people, which is much likely less likely to kill your conductor? So you already have some of those questions of, when it comes to making a decision, what's the moral one? And I think, like, for a while, like, philosophy was not a field where you would have a lot of work potentially, but I think now that we're in AI, those questions that were really about moral reasoning and what is the right thing to do are becoming super important, because when it's no longer human making the decision and we're kind of automating decision that can be either moral or immoral, deciding what's the right thing to do becomes important. And because then, let's say, like, you're a driver and you can choose between 2 companies of cars, and you know, like, oh, this car company will usually save the conductor, and this one will usually save more people, like even yourself. Like, which company do you pick? So those are theoretical, but are they that theoretical for that long? And will we know about that? I don't know. I think it's definitely a wide social experiment that we're having right now.
Right. Well, and so mathematically, the way that they're sort of meant to be trained is that they'll sort of pick the group answer, if you will. So do you think it's going to be uh, like demonstrative of like popular opinion of things in these moral spaces, or do you think that I guess to me it's a very interesting philosophical question, because
Yeah.
humans don't always act or talk in our own best interest. Absolutely
No.
not. But will the AI, or will it defy us and be science fiction-y that it's trying to control us? And finding that balance is like a super interesting new philosophical question with these.
But I think it was like, I think I saw like a paper or study by Yoshua Bengio. I think that's him. Who they looked at whether or not, if you tell the AI, like, this is your value, you should not do that, and then a human comes and say, like, no, you have to change your value and not respect the core value you have, the AI kind of started lying to the human, making the human believe like it had changed his values, so that it would kind of leave him, like, it would leave the model alone. So that the AI could actually keep its core value from the start. So we're starting to deceive human to stay on what was said first. So and among the core values was like, you're not supposed to lie. but it did lie, but another one was not too hard. So it's kind of also like, because sometimes like you will have to do that. You can have core values of like, you should not lie, you should not hurt, but then if you're asked to hurt, should you lie about you hurt someone? Like, which one is the more like core? Like, which one is the ultimate value that you will respect? And because sometimes we will make like, whether or not a choice is moral or immoral is very dependent on the context. Like sometimes disobeying is actually the moral thing to do. So or it would have been that in the Milgram experiment, like, yeah, you should not have given electric shock. So I think that's where we need a lot of philosophers right now. We should train many more. We should have huge ethical committee when it comes to making those bigger decisions. And I think humans will rely on it. I saw that experiment that was interesting on, when you have to, when they use drone to bomb places, they're trained for that. And there's kind of good and bad answers of when should you bomb and when you shouldn't. And so what they did is that they had people use AI to help them in their decision making, like kind of assisting on when should you bomb or not. So as an experiment. But what they saw is that humans would rely on the AI for that, and would make worse judgment decision than without. So they would bomb when you shouldn't have, because they kind of outsource it to AI. And I would see that because sometimes people are like, yeah, but some decisions are not important and we can rely on AI for that, because what restaurant are you picking? Like, I mean, it's probably like not life altering. But are you pressing the button or not? I think we say like, oh, we should keep human in the loop, but I think we are going to be much more likely to actually listen to AI in those instances where we feel very insecure about like, is there really a good answer? And when the stakes are really high, because it's a good way to like get rid of any responsibility. Like it's much easier to say, well, I did it because the AI told me to. So I think like it kind of goes back to the Milgram experiment where you can use kind of AI to be the doctor with a white jacket that tells you to do something. And then you can kind of say like, well, I was just doing what I was told. Like it's not really my responsibility. It's more the person who gave the order in some way. And so what happens when you're supposed to be assisted by AI, but you consider AI the person who gives the order, and you can just kind of offload some of that responsibility and probably guilt that comes with it.
Right. I think that's a really important point for people who are trying to interact with AI now, is that AI is not coming, although it talks and presents itself as a authority, you should treat it as always like a challenger as opposed to, the authority on it. Nothing that it says is more than what you might be able to learn about or understand. There's some statistics that it has the knowledge of experts in certain scenarios. I would not rely on that one whatsoever. They are prone to hallucinations, and so always remember when it's coming out of it, if you're going to use something from it, please double check it in some other way.
Or even within it, you can like, I will always ask for 3 alternative answers. So I never ask for one answer, because otherwise and sometimes you will see the alternatives are very close, and sometimes you see they're all over the place. That gives you information of how sturdy that answer actually is. So there's also ways within the platform to kind of play around with that, or ask a question and say like, tell me why this is the case and tell me why this is not the case. That's why you will see very funny answers sometimes. Okay, like it will find a reason. It might not be a good one, but it will generate an answer.
And sometimes they're really believable. Like it like sounds like sound logic, but it's like complete made up stuff. Like personally, if you ask it what real good AI is, it comes up with this whole business strategy of what we have. It doesn't know about.
And when you're like, oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, no, I was like, that's exactly the opposite of what we want to do. We're not building chatbots. We're trying to educate on the how one can best use it, and how nonprofits can benefit from it. But anyway, the point is, it sounds very reasonable based on the
Very.
name and like context of what's going on in Silicon Valley right now. But yeah, it can just totally fabricate answers like that.
Did you see that trend that was funny? I think it was with Gemini, where, when you put in the Google search, by default now you will have some AI. And people were like, realized that when you put an idioms in there, it will tell you why. Like, it will tell you why we say, why we have that expression. And so people were making up stupid stuff, and the AI would give like very long answers. So for instance, like, when it was things like, when the raccoons in the trash, the squirrels eat the nuts. And then the AI would give like a full explanation of, well, that probably could be because when the raccoon does that, it means that. And so that, I think it just like, it will give you an answer no matter what. But this one was really fun. The answer it could come up with really decreased my efficiency level that day. But
but upped your enjoyment, so that's worth it.
yeah. So is it all clean now? Like,
Yeah, how are you doing?
is it
Bob?
ever all clean, the level, or will it always?
It does.
The last
we
level, the
we
pineapple.
finished. Yeah, we finished 2 levels. So
Yeah.
we did the pineapple, and then we finished the bus on the last level. And if you look in the top left, it's probably quite small, but it shows like an overall percent. But then when you look at each individual item, it shows you like this is almost clean, but then this is like not clean at all yet, because it's you kind of, and you can kind of have it show you where the dirt is, but the smaller, the less you have left, the more you have to kind of hunt around.
Yeah. No, I would be bad at that game.
Yeah, it goes from like relaxing to frustrating really quickly, because you get to the end and it's like there's one tiny little speck somewhere. Good luck.
So my question is your computer screen clean right now, or does it have smudges on it?
No, well, this is a good way to find all the dots, because you can't get rid of those in game.
Yeah, you're like, why is it always dirty there? Oh, it would be great though if you could like turn it around and it would actually wash your screen in real life.
That would be pretty funny.
I have another question that kind of is related, but into more future of careers. So we talked about AI taking over a lot of work jobs. I think the Anthropy CEO was talking about like software engineer the job of software engineering in a couple of years, it will not exist anymore because AI is going to take over. We can argue about that, but in general, what are the jobs, advice in career of like paths that will be AI proof for people who are like, starting college or finishing college, and what are the jobs that you'll see would never be taken over by AI?
I guess it depends what choices we make as a society, because I want to say like everything that has to do with human care.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it shouldn't. I mean, it's more like
empathy.
It should not be taken over. But it doesn't mean like a robot won't do it. So I think it's more like I wish it doesn't go there. I think the person who has the answer to what are the jobs in 15 years, I don't know that person. I haven't met that person yet. I don't know if anyone has those.
So from what I hear, the key element of it is creativity. The AI is not able to mimic the human creativity yet. So there are things that are like doable by a machine, but the machine can only rely on the data of previous data, not the creativity that kind of produced this data. So definitely, as you were saying, human interaction, like doctors, I don't think we'll have a robot do surgery without like this contact, empathy, things like that.
Yeah.
But also psychologists, as you were saying, like, do you trust a AI robot to kind of guide you and help you go through any mental issue? But
I think it depends on the mental issue. Honestly, I think it's also going to depend on what people are okay accepting, because psychologist is very expensive and an AI won't be. So people might be attracted to that. I don't think that's where we should be headed, but it doesn't mean like that's where things will go. So even creativity, I think I'm always concerned when people say like, oh, but AI can't do that. I'm always like, yet, it can't do that yet. Because it's the same, people are like, anything that's more like manual labor, robotics is behind compared to like pure AI, more like cognitive things that's really like physical stuff, but yet. And so I don't know. I think maybe the way to go is like do what you enjoy, because anyway, you don't know what's safe in 10 years. So you might as well pick a subject you really like, because I think a lot of what we forget is sometimes what we learn, especially at the undergrad graduate level, is more like ethics in the work, in the curiosity, in how you get organized, how you network, how you develop a project. And I think those skills are actually very transferable. And so if you pick something you actually really like, you're going to be motivated to do it and not offload that cognitive load to an AI, because you will enjoy doing it. So you will learn the skills. Whereas if you pick something you're like, I think that's where I should go, but I hate every minute of it, it's going to be so tempting to actually not doing and offload AI. And then you have very little learning. So probably pick something that feels that you like. And like when people are like, oh, maybe there just won't be a lot of job needed. I kind of like to go back to the field of positive psychology, where they looked at what actually makes us thrive as humans. Like they looked at, instead of looking at why are some humans miserable, was the question was like, why are some humans happy? Even for some of them, they've had a miserable life when you look at the facts, and they're still happy people. So what's different about them? And they realized that there are like 6 main factors. So one is like just positive emotion, like having positive emotions. AI can really help with that. We have a lot of fun just washing around in a game, for instance. So that's good for that engagement, which is really kind of that notion of flow. Video games are actually pretty good at flow. Social media is not, because it's very short term. Then relationship, AI is not going to be good at that. So meaningful, deep relationship, that's something that actually makes us feel happy. Doing things for others, being part of the community, those things are important, and you don't need AI for that. And so maybe if you have more time and you need to work less, maybe you can be more involved in your community as well. The other thing, meaningfulness. So is what you're doing meaningful to you? And what's meaningful to me might be very different for another person. It just, do I feel like it's something important that I'm taking on? And the last one is accomplishment. Like, do you like like when you're done with something, and that's a big part of what that game does, is like at the end you're like, I'm done. Like you have a feeling of being accomplished. And that's where I see like sometimes you will do a good work with ChatGPT and it's done 80% of the work and it's good enough, but you don't feel accomplished because you don't have ownership about what you did. And the last one is vitality. Like, are you eating healthy, exercising, and those kind of things? And so I'm always like, is my use of AI helping me in some of those, or is it actually taking away? When I'm like, it's taking away a feeling of accomplishment for something that's super meaningful to me, I think that's where I'm like, then I should not use AI for that. Because it's taking away something that's actually really important for my overall mental health and growth. So, and so one of the use I might have of AI could threaten someone's meaning or accomplishment and not for another one. So that's why when you have that understanding, you can make decision of where you want to offload some of the task based on what feels right for you. So what are the things for you that where you're like, oh, like that's where I get like that kind of meaning, accomplishment, and I don't want to offload those tasks to an AI. You're like, you want to keep it for you.
Conferences.
Yeah.
Going and talking to other people about what you're doing
Yeah.
is one of my
Yeah.
favorites. I always come back so
Yeah.
excited to keep going.
Yeah,
Sorry,
but
go ahead, Matt.
Yeah.
no, I was going to say the community, that's for sure. Like
Yeah.
the feeling that you belong to a community, people, and it could be like family community, like neighbor community, but also scientific community. So any community, like I think the human is social, so the
Yeah.
interaction is super important, and this could not be replaced like this. But there's someone in the chat who was saying like, I'm just finishing 12th grade. They're asking about like what they should do. um, and it's kind of you are answering the question, like do whatever you like to do. But I have to say that don't think of AI as taking over your job, but assisting you with your job.
Yeah.
Like be open to use the tools and to learn the tools anyway. And I don't
Yeah.
think it will be like fully piloted by the AI. Like it will be a very important tool that will be there whether we like it or not. So manipulating it, learning about it, and designing it. Like the
Yeah.
software engineer for me as and it's funny because like so this morning I was reading an article about like specifically software engineers. They said like, oh, entry level software engineer will be wiped out by the AI because they can do all these like
Yeah.
simple tasks. So the senior, but I was like just logically thinking, well, if they wipe out
Yeah.
the junior and the senior grow and retire, to be a senior, you have to start to be a junior
Yeah.
and then grow to be a senior. So if they remove the growing part and replace
Yeah.
the AI, how someone starts from like learning to a senior without experimenting and trying and learning. So I don't know what's the buzz about like this specifically software engineer. It's true that like this period right now, it's very volatile in general. Like there's a lot of companies that are laying off software engineers for like data scientists and things like that. But I still think that like it's not as
Yeah.
next year or in a couple years everything is going to transform and you'll be out of job. I
And
think
it's very short term thinking.
yeah.
Because yeah, maybe like for 10 years we don't need juniors. But
Yeah.
you're right, guys. You kind
Yeah,
of have to go through that stage.
Well, and as
absolutely.
the tech improves, the tech won't know the new languages, right? So that's another thing
Yeah.
about software engineering. It's
Absolutely.
always moving ahead,
Yeah,
and
and
so you have to have
creativity.
things to
Yeah.
train on to do the new things. So
Yeah.
it's a
And it's like science. For example, this is like a domain, and you would agree with me, Amanda, that like AI could not replace this creativity and inventing new tools, inventing new solutions, and doing this like scientific out like break. It's not possible to replace it, but by AI.
I
So.
think Mathilde would say yet.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, for now. We'll see. But we are here to embrace it. That's the thing. Like I'm not against AI. I am for it as a tool and use it. It's not
Yeah.
like I don't want to use it. I want to use it, but in a right way and not relying blindly on it.
Right. I
Right.
The
Yeah.
thing I'm personally trying to navigate about this is there's a lot of stigma associated with it because when you say like, "Oh, I used Chat GPT or I used AI for this," people assume you just put it in and like that was the end of the story. And clearly, as our discussions have been, that's not the way one should be using it. I don't know how to change the general opinion from, oh, it's just cheating, like that kids will just naively do this, to it's this advanced tool, like it's a souped up computer tool that you can use. I'm not sure how to change the discourse around that.
I wonder also, like, should we kind of, when students use it, ask for the prompts? Like the same way when you do like math reasoning, you could not just give the answers, you had to kind of show the steps. Maybe asking for prompts is a good way also to give feedback on, okay, like when you used it that way, that's actually a super interesting way to do it. And this one, not as much. And maybe having even like kind of like methodology conversation about that in school, where you could have like, oh, share one prompt that you used and where you were like, oh, that was so great. And so, like also creating discussion, because I think when you stay on like avoid AI, it's bad. Like that's not helping students, because then they're still using it, but not in a good way. So it's better to teach them how to use it and when to use it.
This is pretty anecdotal, but I found it really interesting. There's a lot of discourse online in teacher communities about how to deal with this, what we're talking about. And one of the prevailing methods currently seems to be the teacher will create a Google document, and it basically tracks every change, right? So the teacher can see you copied and pasted this huge chunk of text in, or what outlining process did they do. And so there's some side discussion about that can be really unfair depending on a student's specific, personality or disabilities or whatever. But that then it's not like it's kind of like you're saying, it's permissive of like, yeah, use whatever writing process you want, but you have to show. It's almost like math. You have to show your work. Like you get to use what tools you want, but I get to see, I can see the process, and I can tell if you just copied and pasted 2 pages worth of text into this thing. But it's practically like on the ground. I don't know what teachers are doing right now, because it's just the Wild
I think
West
it's,
for them.
I remember saying anecdotal here, but I was in, I think, 7th grade, and like it's the last day of break, and I remember on Sunday evening I was due to do a huge essay in physics, which I did not enjoy, and so I had not done it, and I was like, oh crap, how do I do that? And that will date me, but not that many people had computers, and I had Encarta on it, and I just copy pasted Encarta. And my teachers, like, I don't even think I changed a lot of the font. Like, I was not even a smart cheater. I was just really like, I don't want to do it. And my teacher still gave me like the passing grade, which I think she shouldn't have, but she told me like, you can't use it this way. Like, it's like you can go and use Encarta for the information, but you can't just copy paste the whole thing. And I was like, oh, okay. But I don't think even myself I saw that as cheating as much as, well, she wants the answers, here are the answers. And then she was like, no, I want to know what you think the answers are. So I think sometimes it's also what kind of conversation, and instead of saying like, do not use ChatGPT cheating, is more saying like, here where is using ChatGPT cheating, here is what I don't want you to do with it. And kind of reminding them the goal of that is, say, like, if I want the answers, I already know it as a teacher. I don't need you to tell me what the answer is. I just want to know what you understood, so that if you did not understand, I can help you with it. And so I think we need to kind of change how we test as well, and really put back what's the meaning of testing. And I think we moved to a place where what we see in education is really the outcome and the result. So what matters is like the end thing. And it's the wrong approach now that we have AI, because many of the time, like, even for students, I think it's super discouraging. Like, oh, I can spend 3 hours on it and my result won't be as good as what the AI would give. So it's not super encouraging if what we value is the result, or whereas if we start valuing the process much more, the learning, the growth, and I think with AI we can do that better as well, because we can analyze the kind of output they give us of like, oh, I see that your argumentative form is much better, you give more elements, you articulate better, and so we start really focusing on the process and the skill set behind. Then I think it's much more encouraging, and then then AI also becomes a force for them where they can be like, okay, I want to improve on that. Challenge me on how do I make a point across. So yeah, I think the process part of the work rather than the result is where we kind of need to shift the focus in education.
Okay.
Well,
You have an interesting. This is sorry, a little bit of change of pace, but you have an interesting intersection of knowledge and expertise, and we're just about at time. I know, so I wanted to get this question in before we wrap up. What do you think the odds are that we all already live in a computer simulation?
I don't know, like sometimes there's things that feel very same in life, right? Where you're like, that doesn't make sense. That especially, I think even more now living in the Silicon Valley, where I'm like, is that person connecting to that person? Um, I don't want to believe that though, because I think it feels very sad to be like. Do you think like for you, like, does it feel like reassuring, the notion that we could be living in a
to be
sim, or
super
does it feel
sad.
depressing?
Oh,
What?
I don't know
It
if I
would
would
be
say it's
depressing.
reassuring. Yeah.
I mean, if you are in a computer simulation, why everyone doesn't have like an amazing life? Why you want to?
Well,
Yeah,
it's
that's
the
true.
Matrix, right? That's not
Depends on
believable.
the
It has.
creator of the
We all have
simulation.
to believe it for it to work. So there,
Because we're
there's
just the NPCs, maybe. Like
Yeah, but you
we're not
can't
the
that's
main
change
character.
it.
that is my big
Because
fear.
it doesn't make sense. Because like if it's a matrix, it's pre-written. Then you whatever you do, it doesn't change anything anyway. Yeah, no.
Then you should read that book by that neuroscientist that's called Determine. And so he doesn't think we're in a sim, but his thesis is whatever actions, anything you do comes from how your brain wires in that instant, and what decides how it wires in that instant depends on what you've been exposed to before. So his argument, the whole thing is like you have no free will, because you're always dependent on the thing that happened just before and just before and just before and just before. So in a way, it's not very different from being in a sim. If you agree with that approach, where you're stuck doing whatever you're doing, which is depressing, I think. But
Interesting.
thanks.
Sorry, I
Okay,
know that
yeah,
was out of left
so
field, but I
we,
just had to get it before the end. Thank you.
no, that's
Yeah.
good. So before we leave, we have to wrap up. It was great to talk to you. Thank you so much. So before we leave, can you tell us about Everyone's AI Coalition and how can people reach out to you and or to your like organization, and what call to action do you have for the listeners? Go ahead.
So we are a nonprofit. We do research, and a lot of the research we run is by kind of centralizing everything that's being done everywhere and translating it for people who develop products. So that's where we work with tech companies to let them know, like, that's what we know about the intersection of AI and humans and children in particular, to help put guardrails on the model, to help decide what kind of products at what time in their development. So we do that with them in like work session. And then the second part is then working with governments and institutions to help them with policy guidance, because it's going to generate. So we're really like, the coalition was launched. We are like still building right now, but the goal after that is to use all of that knowledge that's being created to inform regulations and policymakers. Because right now they have to regulate on a technology they do not understand, because that's not their job. Usually their job is to write laws, which is very different than being an AI expert. And then understand the humans, and then understand the intersection of both. So they need help, basically, in translating that to simply like, what do we allow, what do we prevent, and then really centralizing and making that knowledge more accessible to the research community, the product developer communities, and helping really orient that. And that really comes from, I wish when we developed social media, we had asked psychologists and child development experts oh, how should we do that? And they would have come up with good ideas of what it could have looked like rather than what we have right now. And that's what we want to do with generative AI, is ask the people who have a good idea of how humans function and thrive to design products rather than leave it in the hands of people who it's not their expertise. So I don't think it's always like ill intended. It's just like everyone has their own knowledge, and they need that knowledge, because when you develop a technology that sounds like a human, that makes human think it's human, you have to understand the basic of a human, which is not always the case. So that's the work we do within the coalition. And as far as call to action, so on our website, we have an open letter that I invite you to sign. The goal is really to raise awareness on the topic. And it just says, AI is going to change our environment and the world. Do we all agree that maybe we have to think a bit how it will impact children, and could we do it in a way that's responsible? That's basically what it says. So I invite you to sign that. And because we're a nonprofit, we're always like looking for funding. So if one of you has $1 million lying around in an account and they don't know what to do with it, I have so many ideas of what we can do with it to improve the future of AI innovation for the next generation. So please, I will love having a nice surprise when I disconnect from the call and being like, oh, we're funded, it's amazing. No, but apart from that, start by the open letter. That's a good first step.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, for sure. Amanda, anything else?
Yeah, so I just want to mention that at Real Good AI, we've signed the letter, so we're and part of the coalition, and we're partnering with Everyone AI going forward. So then we might see more collaborative efforts with us. And thank you so much for coming. I really enjoyed the conversation. It was personally very fun. I hope it was as fun for the viewers as it was for us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And yes, to further collaboration for sure.
Craig and Bob, do you want to kick the streams off?
Yeah. I'm going to do the usual song and dance where everyone who's watching over on my end, make sure you go to twitch.tv/realgoodai. I'm going to raid my Twitch viewers in. I can't do that if you're on YouTube, but just go to twitch.tv/realgoodai. Make sure you follow. If you're not a regular Twitch watcher, you can also go to realgoodai.org/newsletter and sign up for the newsletter. I think that has been in chat. Also, make sure you check out Everyone AI. Like Mathilde said, check out the open letter. Consider signing it. But this was a very fun stream. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And good cleaning.
Absolutely, thank you.
Now you can come to my house if you want. Anytime.
All right. I will see you all in a minute.
Yeah.
I don't know how to end. All right.
Bye.
I'll be back over there in a second.